forum type situation where people can express their views either personally. I don't think we're set up to take calls, are we? Is this right? We're not set up to take calls. Well, we'll begin by having the Pledge of Allegiance, and this will be led by Supervisor, I was gonna say Simmons, but, it's not, it's Lyons. Supervisor Lyons, you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and for the first item that we normally have in a session like this is a call to the public, and this is held for the public's benefit to allow individuals to address issues within the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and decision at a future date. Normally, on the call to the public, I leave it open throughout the meeting, so if somebody kind of shows up late or hears something they like or not like during the time of the meeting, I can always open up the call to the public and allow people to say what they want to say within certain limitations. So we were going to open the regular discussion calendar, which is discussion and action items, and we'll open each of the following items separately for discussion and action as appropriate. This agenda has been posted, published, so, it's requirements that we have to follow the open meeting law. We do have attorneys present, so, you should be careful what you say, because anything you say can and will be used against you, kind of thing. So we're gonna move on to discuss and consider county positions on prospective legislative and policy issues. We will include the following. I think I'm going through the welcome. I do have bios for everybody, and I want to begin by acknowledging the presence of our elected representatives, the ones that are here right now, mostly Republicans, I see, which doesn't mean anything. It just means, you guys are. Yeah. So Tim, we met a long time ago. I think we started off by appointing him a few years ago. We didn't know how good it was going to turn out to be, but we took a leap of faith, and he's turned out to be very, very good. Tim, thank you very much. He's a farmer from Yuma County. He knows what the issues are, and he's always attentive to whatever we ask him to do. So Tim, without going into a lot of bio stuff, when you are a known quantity to us, and we appreciate the fact that you represent us. Now, the other two, Michelle and Mr. Carboni. No, they're sort of new to us, but I want to begin by telling you all that during the time I've been in the Board of Supervisors, there's always been something consistent about the people who represent us, regardless of the party affiliation. They've always been great. They've always been, and I know I have one next to me because Lynn Pancras used to be a state rep and used to be a state senator. And I go back to the time that Jones Osborne and some of those people were representing us. We always had the same comments. We're a rural county, but the representatives that we send to the local Congress never act that way. They act like they belong there, and that has always been a trait that we appreciate from our representatives. They're always willing to listen. They're always willing to carry the water for the county. So literally carry the water from the county for the county. So we do have a couple of new legislators, people who just recently been elected. Michelle Peña, I just had the pleasure of meeting. Michelle has got a very long bio. Long, if you saw what I was going to see here. I don't think we need to tell you a life story. I think what we need to do is acknowledge the fact that you've been elected to represent us, and that all we ask from you is to have the willingness to listen to some of the issues, get informed about them, and support as much as you can support the things we need to get the job done. This is not. I think most of you know me. I was a former mayor of the city of San Luis, and when I became a supervisor, the most striking thing to me was the fact that how statute-driven the county is. When you're the mayor of a city, you sort of like, you can do anything that is not basically prohibited by law. When you're a county supervisor, you can only do what's in statute. And that makes it it's like the flip side of a coin. You need to be able to to find some statute that backs you up to be able to do whatever you want to do. So it is a very different level of government. It is, like I said before, very statutory driven. It is very, very set in the way you get things done. So it becomes even more critical to have the right representatives that listen to our issues and get the legislature moving in a way that can benefit the residents of Yuma County. Michelle, welcome, and I hope to have a long-term working relationship with the county, with you, and personally, I really like you, so that's a pretty good thing. And Mr. Carboni, I didn't have the pleasure of meeting you before. I heard your name, I heard your story, and I tell you again, to me, people's background story is how they get there. But once you get there, that's the beginning, that's the present, and you move forward. So I also will tell you that the expectations we have of you are high, which is the way it should be, and that whatever you've done before to get here, it is a story. What you do from now to the forward is what you will make, what you will become for us. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate all three of you right now being here. I hope somebody else shows up, but if they don't,
Brian's on the phone.
Brian's on the phone?
He's right here on my phone.
Oh, well, Brian's on the phone. So Brian Fernandez, who I also know, personally know since he was a kid, he's on the phone. He's our state senator-elect. He was a representative. So I suppose, Brian, that there's nothing new that we're going to talk about that you haven't heard before. But that, I think, takes care of the presentations. I mean, if you haven't met the members of the board, Mr. Simmons, Ms. Pancrasi, Mr. Borges, Mr. Lyons, I always give him a little bit more of a hard time because he's used to it. I want him to feel right at home. So anyway, the first thing we're going to do is hear from our Arizona Association of Counties to hear the legislative platform, and for that, Jennifer Marson, who is the executive director of the association, will come forth and sort of give us a brief synopsis of what their legislative agenda looks like.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. I'm a little short, so I don't know if the sound, is it picking up?
Yeah, you got you.
Okay, you got me. Perfect. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Marson. I'm the executive director at the Arizona Association of Counties. We are an association that works with the elected positions at the county level. Almost everyone except the supervisors, they have their own association. You'll hear from their executive director in a minute. So when ACO takes a position on something, that's not a position that the staff has taken. It's led by our board of directors or our LPC, which are made up of all elected officials who take those positions. And those are the same entities that propose items to us every year. And then again, the board makes a decision amongst all the proposals submitted about which ones will be in the county government platform. That's what we call it. So we have 20 proposals in our platform this year. I am not going to talk about all 20 of them. You are welcome. But I did pick out a couple that I think would be relevant to this group, and I believe on the handout you have, they're the ones that I have highlighted. I'm happy to answer questions about any of them, but I'm just going to talk about the highlighted ones really quick. So the first is number 2, the short-term rental classification. We've been working on this one for a couple of years with the assessors. I know the County Supervisors Association is very interested in this as well. And this is creating a standard set of rules and definitions for when a short-term rental property is residential versus when it's commercial. We've seen the explosion of Airbnb or VRBO, whatever we want to call them, throughout all of our counties, and we want to make sure that they're properly being classified and assessed by the assessor's office. The number 7 is a lateral hire reimbursement. This was a suggestion from the county sheriffs. As you know, law enforcement officers, especially at the county level, are trained. We expend that money to train them, and then some other agency poaches them. Now that happens with other agencies as well, but I feel like counties are getting the short end of that stick a lot, right? And so what this does is sets up a tier system. If DPS is going to take one of our new hires, if a different city is going to take one of our new hires, they're going to reimburse us for the cost of the training. Now it works both ways. If we steal from some other agency, we would have to reimburse for the cost of the training as well. But that makes sure that you're not just training people to send them to work to another agency and thus losing all of the value of those dollars that you put into training that individual. Number 9, we just secured a sponsor for our residency requirements. It's actually Mr. Dunn here, who's in the room. So this is an interesting one. This is a bill that was suggested by the Yavapai County attorney last year, but she didn't do it through ACO. She just contacted a legislator and said, hey, I think this is a good idea. What do you think about this? It passed the Senate, it died in the House, there was confusion, and there was nobody lobbying the issue, right? Sheila couldn't be there that day. Mr. Peterson was busy over in his chamber, so he couldn't come over, and then there just was no one to talk about it. So it sort of died. But what it says is, it allows not the elected official, but their deputy or their officer, which is someone who can execute the role of that office. That person doesn't have to live in Arizona. They do still have to be a citizen. That was part of the challenge last year. The wording was weird, and it made it sound like they didn't have to be or they weren't now. That is not the case. So this is just making sure that those people would have to live in Arizona. I don't know that all offices could utilize this statute. It won't apply just to the attorneys. It would apply to all the elected positions. But for example, in the sheriff's office, chances are you want your deputies living in the state because you may need to call on them in a quick fashion. But in an attorney's office, you could have some attorneys who are doing civil work who are probably used to working remotely now, right? And we don't want to lose those people if they happen to move across the border in California, New Mexico, what have you. So this would allow us to keep those, and especially in this time of difficulty finding staff. Okay, we're going to move to the next page. Number 13 is a very familiar item for Yuma County. We have tried to do this many years. It did have other pieces in previous years. Right now it's very pared down. If you are a third-party entity out there doing voter registration out in the world, we don't want you to pay your workers by the number of forms that you submit. Pay them hourly, pay them a salary, but don't pay per form, because what happens is the county gets a lot of crappy forms, right? And then we have no choice as the county to process them. It's labor intensive, it's often redundant, it's often people who are already registered, but we're still doing that double check. So we just don't want them to be paid per form. And then number 15, this is a wrinkle that came about because in 2018, the legislature passed a law that said, if you're gonna vote early in person, not sending you a ballot in the mail, if you're going to come to a place during early voting and vote in person, you have to show ID. That was the law in 2018. Great. It creates a wrinkle because any voting that occurs before Election Day is considered early voting. It's under the purview of the county recorder's office, and all of those subsequent statutes apply. And one of those statutes says we have to signature verify, right? Because if you vote early in person, you're getting your ballot, you're voting it, but you're still putting it in an envelope and signing it. We've already checked your ID in this scenario per the 2018 rule. We do not have to signature verify again. We've already taken your driver's license when you showed up to the place to vote, right? So what this would say is in those unique circumstances, in an early voting world, we've taken your ID, that ballot can be considered ready to tabulate. There's no need for us to signature verify it and verify your ID again. So that's what number 15 does. And I think the last one I'll point out is on page 3. That's number 19. It's a drug homicide issue that comes to us from the county attorneys. We are dealing with so much fentanyl, really, all over the state that is very damaging. And it establishes a new offense for those people who are providing the drugs to the people who die. If you're going to give someone something and it kills them, there should be some liability on the side of the person who gave them that drug. Now, there's lots of negotiations going on because, you know, you think about like a college frat house environment, for example, right? Just because I happen to have gotten the drugs from someone, I didn't know that they were bad when I give them to my friend John, who then has an adverse reaction. We are negotiating about the wording because are we going after the frat kid who bought something or the person who gave it to the frat kid? The attorneys are interested in going after the person who gave it to the frat kid, right? So we have to get the wording right. We understand that, but that is a big priority for the county attorneys this year. I'm happy to answer questions about any of those or any of the other items. I really appreciate the time, and thank you.
Jennifer, one question, I do have a question, I know somebody else may, but on the early ballot ID, that would obviously not apply to someone dropping off their ballot, right? Because they don't have to identify themselves.
No, so I want to be really clear. There is a big distinction between dropping off your ballot on election day and what this bill does. This bill is talking about situations before election day, when you come to vote in person early. If you drop off your early ballot before election day, this does not apply. But if you wanted to vote in person early, this would apply. So it's not the whole universe of early voters.
Right, so on election day, you show up, you have an early vote, but they send to you, you didn't do it, you have it with you, but you want to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens in that situation?
You want to vote a standard ballot?
Yeah, you say you want to drop off your ballot is one thing, right? Because the only way to certify that person's ID is through the signatures requirement.
Correct.
So if you want to vote and you have to, if you, let's say that you lost your ballot, but you show up on election day and you prove who you are and you vote, but that ballot won't be counted. You will be set aside to be.
No, we're mixing the things now. So on election day, Tuesday, you were mailed an early ballot, but you lost it. You show up at the polling place, you give your ID, and you vote what we call a standard ballot. You vote the same ballot that anyone would vote if they showed up that day, whether they're on the early voter list, got an early ballot or not. This bill, number 15, does not impact election day at all. It only affects the voting that happens before election day.
All right, it's okay. I understand that a little better because the process for us requires that obviously a person that has a ballot sent to them but exercises the right to vote election day, that ballot cannot be counted. That day has to be verified. We have to verify that the early ballot hasn't reached or hasn't been voted on before we count that.
Right, but because all of the counties are using e-poll books, we are in a live situation where the e-poll books can talk to your election management system back at headquarters. So if I'm an early voter in Yuma County and I've been sent an early ballot and I show up on election day and say, I want to vote here. When I go to check in, the system will say, oh, we sent Jennifer a ballot, but you know what? We haven't tabulated it or counted it yet, so you can go ahead and vote here. And then if and when we do get your early ballot in the mail, we just ignore it because you've already voted day of.
All right, is that the way it is right now?
That's the way it is right now.
I should know better, but
That's okay.
I just want to make it clear. I do have something there's some confusion about to be verified, voters. We can probably talk about that in detail, but what you're trying to do is clarify the situation for people who vote early at a location. Personally.
Before election day. Mm-hmm.
Election day is the process we already have a method to deal with that. What is happening right now is somebody that votes early has to both prove who they are and get it verified.
Correct.
Signature. And what you're trying to do is simplify it, but once you prove who you are, you shouldn't really have to be signature verified.
That's correct, sir.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Any questions from anyone? I was asked by the staff from the Channel 77 to please have everybody that speaks use a microphone so that people can hear that at home. I know they get offended when I say for the thousands of people watching it, but it's a joke that doesn't play well. Okay, so yes.
Ask a question?
Sure.
Jim, so on the moving the lateral hires or moving law enforcement, so is that forever or how is it just when you just train for 5 years or like you hire someone that's been working for the sheriff's department and goes to the city police after 10 years?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Dunn, that's a great question. It's a 3-year tier system. So it's only within the 3 years. And if memory serves, if you take them within the first year, it's a higher percentage of reimbursement, lower the second year, lower the third year, go on the fourth year. So it doesn't last forever.
In most cases, I thought that the sheriff, for example, if they sent someone to qualify, you give them the proper training, so on and so forth, I thought that they had to stay with you for a certain period of time. Is that not the case? Sure.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. In regards to Yuma County, we do a contract, but not all sheriffs do that. So if they leave within a certain amount of time, then they have to reimburse the county for those costs. for other agencies, this worked out better for them because they didn't want to deal with the contract type.
I was under the impression most of the municipalities in Yuma County, and Yuma County has a situation where if we send you to get trained, I mean, you have to stay with us for at least 2 years or 3 years, whatever the time is. Because we're in an environment or an area that's a lot of law enforcement. There's a lot of competition. We've got DEA, we got all kinds of law enforcement agency, Border Patrol, we got Customs, we got ICE, we got so much competition that it's difficult for those smaller entities to send someone to the academy and have them spend 6 months, 9 months training, and then they get the certificate, and 6 months later they're working at the border. And so we have a definite, very competitive area here that necessitates mostly that there be some assurances that someone you train is going to give the entity that pays your training back enough to justify the expense. All right, any other questions? And no question is dumb, okay? I'm saying that right now because I make a lot of dumb questions sometimes, but no question is dumb. No, if you have a doubt about anything, just ask the question. Anyone, okay? Not just people up here, anyone out there in the audience can do that. Jennifer, thank you very much. I don't see anyone raising their hands.
Great, thank
They
you.
either understood everything you said or nothing, one of the two.
Hopefully everything. Thank you.
All right, Craig. I don't know this man, but
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, county officials, and legislators. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. My name is Craig Sullivan. I'm with the County Supervisors Association. I have to tell you, I came down here today. I never thought I would come down to Yuma to freeze the way I was freezing when I got down here. That's a first for me.
that was not for you, only for you. Every one of us out here thinks it's warm.
Is that right? It's getting a little cold in Phoenix, though, too. But I also wanted to acknowledge that I've got our legislative liaison, Jacob Emnett, back here today to join me as well. And it's really our pleasure to just brief you a little bit on who we are and what we'll be doing this next legislative session, and in particular to connect with these lawmakers, because we really count on your partnership over at the state capitol. A little bit about us. We are an intergovernmental office supporting the supervisors, and we do work collaboratively with Jen Marson over at the Arizona Association of Counties. Our facilities are right by the Capitol, so you'll find that we're just west of the Executive Tower, and we really look forward to having you over at some point and visiting with you. But we're right on the ground, and it's our job to liaise with you virtually every day, just to make sure you've got good information as it relates to bills that impact Yuma County and the other counties. The materials that I provided with you walk you through a little bit of what we work on. First, I did want to highlight that our board adopted a resolution this year speaking to the state and county partnership and how important it is. The chairman mentioned at the beginning that counties are creatures of state law. We are linked in state statute. Decisions that you make will touch county operations. They'll impact resources, they'll impact tax rates, they'll impact service delivery times. So it's really important that we are connected. And supervisors have been organizing to have this collaboration with lawmakers since our earliest record is 1913. And so going back to statehood, this partnership between counties and lawmakers has been critical. And so the resolution that we provided to you will walk you through a little bit of some of those key touch points that I think will just be helpful in you understanding the partnership that you're now part of. The next document I gave you was to talk about some state mandates. Counties implement overwhelmingly state law. We are implementing state services locally. They're mandated by the state legislature. And this graphic will show you that that has a significant impact on budgets and on tax rates. And so I just picked 3 state mandates that Yuma County has to perform on behalf of the state. One is to be a funding partner in the state court system. The second is to fund the state's long-term care system, which is an indigent healthcare system. And the third is to implement the public safety pension system, the corrections officers pension system, and others that are all creatures of state law. And you can see on that graphic that there's significant contributions to the Yuma County General Fund. But I think most graphically you can see on the second page that overwhelmingly Yuma County's tax rate, if we use that as a measure, is consumed by these three mandates: funding the state judiciary, funding payments to the Access and All-Tech system, and making payments to the pension system. And so just three, all controlled by the state legislature and the court system, consume significant resources. And so I wanted to do that simply to highlight that that's why the partnership's so important, that we're able to help give you information on what policy decisions mean to local finances and operations, and that's really our job going forward. I also provided to you what our adopted platform was going into this legislative session, and it's in this document for you. And what we did is we highlighted some of the key financial items, but I'll only touch on a couple. One is about the pension systems in our state. Arizona's counties have been very concerned about the financial burden to the taxpayer of our pension systems. A lot of that was done because of prior commitments made, right, that we all inherited. And so over the last many years, we have been working with the legislature to reform those pension systems, and those have been put in place and operational now. We spend a lot of time working with the administrators of the pension systems in that regard too. Yuma County and other counties have worked on mechanisms to pay down that debt in a more cost-efficient way to the taxpayers. And so counties have recently put about $800 million to stabilize the pension systems. Mr. Dunn, you know very well that the state's done similarly. It's been a big lift for all of us to try to pay those contractual obligations that we owe from prior years. But what I want to share with you is that that is still a significant impact to the county. The county paid that down not with one-time money, but by finding low interest rate bonds. The pension system is essentially a 7% interest rate loan. The remarkable bond market that existed during the pandemic allowed for counties to get in the 2 to 3% rate bond market to capitalize that fund, but we're still carrying debt. And so we're very mindful of that. And so what our concern is, and you will see some of this, is there will be conversations about those pension systems, all very well intended. But what we want to make sure is that we're evaluating every policy decision that's put before you that impacts the long-term costs in the pension systems to make sure that they are actually addressing a problem that's defined, that they are going to be the worthwhile investment to solve that problem, and that over time it'll be paid for at the most efficient way to the taxpayer. Because the problems we inherited were problems created 20 years ago, and then we had to clean them up. We don't want to send that kind of burden to future lawmakers. We're also working a lot on transportation and broadband, and we'll be seeing you on those items. The state partnership on broadband investment has been critical, both in terms of capitalizing grant programs, creating a state office to coordinate. There are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, federal dollars, coming online to support broadband investment. The states are operating the counties are operating regionally. We will need to partner with the state as well to make sure we operationalize that investment, and similarly on transportation. On the back side of that document, we provided some bills that we will be running, and I won't get into detail on them all. It's just to give you, particularly the new lawmakers, a sampling of the things that counties do. They're basic government things, and we have to come to the legislature to get policy improvements to them. But the bills that we're working on that may be introduced have to deal with how we provide mental health treatment in the jails, how we provide legal representation as a backstop for school districts, medical examiner, safety equipment when the state puts an inmate to death, how we deal with the printing of contracts and bidding out transportation-related maintenance efforts. So all just basic government stuff, which likely will be headed to your committee in many ways, Mr. Dunn. But the one I did want to highlight that's listed for you here is particularly relevant to Yuma County, and that's related to out-of-state biosolids. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to ask Jacob on my team, who's been doing a lot of work on this, to give you about 3 minutes on that topic, and then we can open it up for questions.
Good morning, supervisors, Yuma County elected officials, and representatives. Very nice to see you all. My name is Jacob. I'm with the County Supervisors Association. I'm not sure if I could go for an entire 3 minutes. I know that's a partnership between
Don't
me.
worry about it. Shorter the better.
Oh, fantastic. But we are working on an issue concerning out-of-state biosolids. For those who are unfamiliar, these biosolids are the end result of treating human waste. Biosolids are typically disposed of in landfills, but sometimes they are applied to farmland to improve the soil structure. However, over the past few decades, we've seen counties located specifically around the Los Angeles and San Diego area begin to ban the practice of biosolid land application. And it's for probably the reasons you'd all expect. Quality of life concerns for residents, smell, something typical. We've begun, since those bans have kind of come in, to see California waste companies bring biosolids to Arizona, and as I'm sure many of you know, specifically Yuma County. In one case, this waste is coming from California cities like Colton and Escondido, but also California municipal wastewater districts, sanitation districts, and wastewater treatment plants. And I believe that Mr. Figueroa with the county has additional context from the county lens. Thank you.
Certainly, and I think all the efforts come from the fact that as supervisors, we have little to do or little to say about, how much or when, how this is applied to the ground. And it's been a thorn in our side for years that we get all these complaints, flies, and we get all these complaints. And there's all these studies that the universities do, but in reality, they're just tools that we can't really use because essentially whatever the result is, we still don't have any control over who comes and does this. So, they told me to use the microphone. Although my voice is deep.
And that's why it's become such an issue for us because we see the increase. It has increased dramatically in terms of the acreage where this is applied. If you live in my district, which is the southern portion of Yuma County, and you can smell it as you go by it all the time, especially in the winter. And as we are probably familiar, all of us who are familiar with our district, it is growing at a very, very fast pace. And the more it grows, the closer it gets. And the closer it gets, the more difficult it is to explain to our constituents that essentially we can't stop it from coming, we can't stop it from growing, we can do very little, Supervisor. So it's appreciated that it will get into the level now where the state is starting to realize that we just becoming the dumping ground for California. And it's just something that it happens a lot more in Yuma County. I think it only happens in Yuma County, and it's not something we're going to stand aside and look at it grow. We need to do something about it. And as I listen to what your presentation is, and as I've listened lately to the report that we're getting, ADEQ, which is the agency I think tasked with the permitting process, is now starting to realize they have to take into account, when they give a permit, they have to at least have a process where the residents here have a say about what they get next to their properties. Thank you. Alejandro, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I would ask him to report on the phone call we had last week with ADEQ.
Report on the call you had last week with ADEQ.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, county elected officials, state representatives, and senator, we held a call with Director Cabrera from ADEQ regarding this issue, and additionally with the Arizona State Land Department this week as well. So the agencies, apparently they were not aware of what's going on here in Yuma County as far as biosolids coming from California. They're looking into a administrative fix, so fix the rules within the agency right now. But we wanted to make sure that you were aware of what's going on here in Yuma County if we ever have to come to the legislature and ask for your support to draft. Taking notice at the state level of the issue here in Yuma County.
And I think it's because it's noticeably growing. I mean, this is state leased land, and it's being used for agriculture, and it's now growing from hundreds of acres to thousands and thousands of acres. And fortunately and unfortunately, we have a lot of growth in the dairy industry, and it's starting to encroach or get closer and closer as time goes by. And I think the public in general is becoming a lot more sensitized to where their crops are grown and what's around them, and those things. And I know in the agricultural field how careful we are with any type of contamination that happens in the fields. I'm concerned that at some particular point in time, somebody's going to point out that some of these crops are next to places where biosolids are being injected into the ground, and it's going to become a public relations nightmare for an industry that's really growing, providing a lot of employment in the county. And it's something that I believe, and I think you repeated that I don't think that the state land department that leases the land understands exactly what's being done with it or to it. And I think the ADEQ just doesn't seem to acknowledge and realize that this is not as simple as just issuing a permit for biosolids. I don't think they went into it deep enough to understand that it is a local health issue, and if it's a perception that it's a health issue, it becomes a reality now. So it's a reality now that people driving around there understand that what's going on is just, again, California using Yuma County as a dumping ground for things they have prohibited from happening in their state. And guess what?
They're green because they're jumping.
I have a question. And I think the transition is, for the last 30 years, they've been doing it, but it was injecting liquids. And so when they transitioned to dry powder, you see the dust. So I want to make sure we clarify that the supervisors have no control of this. It needs to be legislative bill to fix it if we can't get it done with ADQ.
The company who's managing biosolids here in the county is under the Act exemption, so the county has no zoning authority over them. So now, the State Land Department has promised that they will not renew any leases to companies that manage out-of-state biosolids. The problem with that is now these companies might try to buy the land from the state. And so that's another issue that we'll have to deal when that happens. But as of right now, we have the promise from the State Land Department, the commissioner herself, saying that the lease will not be renewed on those companies managing out-of-state biosolids on state land. Now, if they were to move into private land, the county cannot do anything about it as far as zoning, and currently we don't have the opportunity to comment, so there's no public comment period when they come in and ask for a permit from ADEQ. So that's something we're also working with ADEQ to change that and have at least the opportunity to state our comments, have the public be able to state their views on it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we need to schedule a meeting where we can talk about this with your team and ADEQ. So,
Mr. Chair, just a couple of comments. Alejandro, I'm really shocked to hear that ADEQ didn't know about this. I was the mayor in Somerton when the complaints started happening. In fact, you were senator, and I spoke with Lynn several times. In fact, the county health department had a meeting at one of the buildings in the county. Then staff from ADEQ were there. There were several, I know the owners of the Dates were there, or that owned, and they were very concerned about, at that time, E. coli was probably here and there in agriculture, so salmonella. But it was, I'm shocked to hear that from them, that they didn't. Right? When I see Mr. Cabrera, I'm gonna ask. He's from Somerton. Mikael, or he's from Somerton. I went to school with him. I'm gonna have to. When I see him. But they knew about it.
I think staff knew about it.
And Mr. Chair and Tim, they're not injecting it anymore. They're putting it in the landfill and then they're folding it over, and it's causing the flies. It is absolutely disgusting. Absolutely. When they were injecting it, we didn't have this issue. And yes, and like I said, we have issues with flies because we grow crops. We have melons, we have lettuce, we have all this stuff. We're willing to take care of our own issues, our own fly issues, because of our own waste and our own crops. We're just not willing to take care of California's as well. If they want to be green, they can figure out a way to be green and take care of their own waste. Sorry.
Some of the things that we spoke about on that phone was being able to have restrictions according to the, I forgot what the classification was of the chemicals that they were
Yes,
using. Do you remember that specific classification, Alejandro? But that was one way to consider the restrictions. But then we also have a challenge with the Interstate Commerce Clause. And then we cannot enact a legislative fix that does well, it was specifically that does not exceed the federal level, even though California already has. So there are some real challenges, but we could specifically identify those chemicals that are found in the soil, especially because of that water coming off the mesa being returned to the Colorado River.
I'm being informed it's PFAS.
PFAS.
Okay, well, the point that we're all trying to make is situations like what we have right now where someone can say, well, I didn't know about it. It's why we need a legislative fix. Because I think that people change, different departments, people retire, new people come in, and the background and the history is lost. And this necessitates a legislative fix that will stay. Even if we have challenges in terms of interstate commerce that we need to deal with, that still doesn't mean that we shouldn't do something. California obviously did it. And you know what they're putting us in a situation is that they're putting us in a situation that we go to the agency that's permitting it, and they have the ability to say, well, I didn't know anything about it. I think that's the classic example of what happens as time goes by. Yes, that's been in my district for, 20 years, and it's been a situation where every time we complain about it, we say, well, we're not a permitting agency, and the permitting agency, I think we're going to get to water issues, and you're going to understand what the frustration is going to be when you talk about water issues in Yuma as opposed to water issues in Maricopa or Pima. There's a difference that people here know, that people at BLM or Board of Reclamation can say, well, we didn't know or we don't care. We're a federal agency. We get into those issues at this particular level, but the point is this is affecting the basically daily life of a lot of people now. Those roads are pretty well traveled, and every time you go through there, next to them, the wind is blowing your way. Boy, you have to not breathe for about 2 or 3 minutes if you can. Well, anyway, it's pretty bad, and I think we're spending a lot of time on it. That in reality, it's just an issue that when it comes up to you, you will know more about it. And if you need to know more about it, Alejandro, who we all here have to acknowledge is put this thing together, can give you the additional information you need if it gets up to you, or even the CSA or the ACO can provide you with the information regarding almost any of these issues. Alejandro, thank you. I think, is there any more questions on this?
It's not the smell that bothers me as much as the flies and what the flies are carrying, the E. coli and the salmonella and the diseases that they carry and the kids and the people that it's going to impact. That's what concerns me.
Okay, I think we spent enough time on this. Thank you, Alejandro, and we will move on to the items that we have as a county that we'd like you to know about. And I didn't actually plan it the way that maybe I should have, having an individual that handles explaining the situation, but I'm going to do the best I can. We'll begin with broadband access for rural areas. The pandemic basically showed us just how bad the situation was in the rural areas when people tried to do their school from someplace that didn't have any Wi-Fi reach. Or agriculture showed us the problem where they were trying to use broadband, Wi-Fi, to level their fields or to do anything. It really highlighted the fact that there's a reason why these large companies move to places like Maricopa or Pupima. They do offer the kind of services that they need to conduct business in this new world that is so reliant on having access to Wi-Fi, dependable service. And as much as it pains us to say that, whenever we claim that we like to live in a rural area, I can tell you from personal experience that once you live in a rural area and you realize just what you have to do, if you have to wake up in the middle of the night and open up the canals to irrigate your land, you will understand what I'm saying, getting a call in the middle of the night saying, well, you're getting water in half an hour. And, that's the kind of thing you get in a rural area, but that, I think people can deal with. Fact is, broadband access or Wi-Fi access is something that we set aside as one of the top priorities in Yuma County back when we were told that we're going to receive a certain amount of money from the federal government. We set aside $20 million to invest in providing what we call the middle mile, which is the backbone of the Wi-Fi services in outlying areas. IT people, and I see the IT guy here, could explain it better than I can, but most people made, well, it's not a choice anymore. It's something that you need to have. So we've invested a lot of time and money on this particular project. I'll have Administrator Ian, whose last name I can't pronounce. He's been Makehi, could come up and explain a little bit just where we are. We have contracted a company named Halo, and their trucks are everywhere. Hopefully, will give us an update on where we're at with this, and it'll serve as a basis for whatever discussion we have on the broadband service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, elected officials. Thank you for being here. Ian Makehi, County Administrator. As the chairman stated, this is a top priority project for the Board of Supervisors. 140-mile middle mile backbone network throughout the county. And $20 million has been invested by the county using ARPA funds, and an additional $10 million has been secured by the Arizona Commerce Authority through a competitive grant process. So we're looking good with that middle mile. However, it does not cover the entire county. It's focused on the more populated areas. We are on track with ALLO in their contract. They've submitted design for 7 phases of the project out of the total 15. They have 20 months from the time of signing the contract to get it done, and they're on track. So we're excited about that, but there's more to be done. There's the final mile, which connects the middle mile to the residences and businesses that need it, and that's where the proof is in the pudding. That will be an open access to all private industry to connect to our middle mile, to get that job done and get our residents and businesses hooked up with this reliable, fast, high-speed internet. The goal of this whole project is to serve those underserved communities, or those unserved communities, who, as the chairman indicated, really we saw during the pandemic how bad it really can be in parts of Yuma County. So very excited about this project, but we need additional funds to see it through all the way. And that's what we're hopeful with the additional grant funds coming down the pike that was spoken about earlier. We're optimistic that we will be able to get those funds. This is a worthwhile project. We're hopeful that the county will not be asked to contribute significant matching funds if we've already invested more than $20 million of our own funds toward this project. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
It is a really important project for us, and from our perspective, we at the county level basically decided that it was a time for us to step up, because nobody else was willing to, and so we have invested a lot of time and money and a lot of the county, I guess, reputation on getting this thing done. And when you say it covers the populated areas, I want to make it clear that the purpose is not. Your populated areas can get their service, Yuma, but populated areas like San Luis or like Welton or like Martinez Lake, those are what we call populated areas. They're areas where there's growth. There's the foothills is one of them, for example, which is not incorporated in, but areas that are populated with large populations attract private investment, attract the private sector because they can get a return. The problem is getting to those areas is very expensive. And this broadband that we're talking about is, I think it's fiber. It's fiber optics, which will bring us up to a point where the service that we provide will be, or can be provided through that backbone, through that middle mile. It's the kind of service that can be used and used broadly by everybody. It doesn't have that limitation that, I have cable service in my house, and I'm at the end of a cul-de-sac. So whenever everybody shows up at home in the afternoons, I can tell. The power diminishes because there's so much demand that at the end, if you're at the end of a line of anything, it's going to be like you have to sort of understand that when it's peak time, you don't have peak service. And so what we're trying to do here is get that service to the outlying areas. Yeah, they might be populated, but they're not populated enough to attract investment from the private sector. So we're taking that up.
Mr. Chairman, Ian, what is the estimate for finishing the middle mile? How much money is that requiring?
Well, I believe we have enough funds right now to do the 130-mile middle mile as it stands, but to extend it even further, do we have an estimate? At this point, we do not have that estimate. But one of the critical things which I think you're getting toward is smart agriculture is around the corner. We're already seeing it in places in California. And what that does is enables the high-speed internet, or it utilizes the high-speed internet to control these farm machinery equipment out in the fields that can increase productivity dramatically. And really, with agriculture being our top industry here in Yuma County, that's going to have a huge impact, not only for our residents and our small businesses, but for agriculture, and just keep that growing. But we need to have that extension out further into the county to capitalize on that investment.
And I want to make sure, Tim, that we acknowledge the fact that Halo is investing a lot of money too. They are the last mile provider. If nobody else comes up and says, we will do it for this fee, they can do it. So there's no point of building a canal system that doesn't lead anywhere. The point is we're doing a middle mile because there's already a provider at the end. But what I've been told is that it will take another $18 to $20 million to get to the furthest reaches of the county. This is a large county. It's the size of bigger than Rhode Island. It's a large county, and all we could do with the money that we had available and the investment that we're willing to make at the time was just provide for 120 miles or middle mile. And that means that we're not going to be able to get to the edge all the way almost to Quartzsite. We're not going to get all the way to the edge in, I think it's 74 miles out that way. Aztec or places in there. That's going to be the toughest part, because the number of customers in that area are not going to be large enough. We're going to have to invest in just simply servicing the agricultural industry, getting to the furthest reaches of the county. It's going to take additional investment, and that to us is the next step. We're going to get it to the places that say they need it for economic development, for expansion, but it's going to be tough. The last mile or the middle mile, the last miles are going to be the toughest, because they're going to be the ones that we're going to have to, that the investment from the county is going to have to be the highest, and the return is going to have to be the lowest for the private sector. So we're going to, I feel we just going up this hill, and we're going to get there, and then we're going to look up, and there's another hill, and it's bigger than the one we just, climbed. But, and that's what we're supposed to do. So, all we needed to do is let you know that we're on this task, and that at some particular point in time, we may come up to you and say, look, if you have a little extra money, we'll need it, and this is what we needed, okay? So that's pretty much the extent of the explanation. Tim?
I don't need to be the only one talking, but I want the public to know that, and thank you guys for doing the $20 million investment, because you're one of the leading counties in the state and in the country. I chair a national rural leadership committee for rural legislators, and broadband has been the nation's discussion. We got, I believe, over $1 billion going to come into the state through the Investment Act. And my goal is, we did $100 million, I think, last budget, the one before, $100 million for rural Arizona. That's where this $10 million came from. I think we should, I'm looking at trying to do an additional money that could be counted towards the cost share, so that the smaller counties cannot have to, if they need that 10% or additional money, we can use that money from the state to go against the cost share for that $1 billion. So if we can try to put another $100 million in the budget, so we'll be working on that, and we'll make sure our colleagues understand it. But you guys have done a good job, your leaders in the state, and on getting this middle mile and figuring out how to get it done.
Well, thank you very much. My feeling is that we found something that was actually, everybody agrees that that's a need now, that it's not a want. I like saying I want more, I want better Wi-Fi, just doesn't cut it. The private sector will tell you, yeah, but, it just doesn't work. I think that the board, and I want to thank the board, and I want to thank the people who put it together, because we sort of put together a committee, and we took some flack for this one. It wasn't that simple, it wasn't that easy, but anything that's worthwhile like that sometimes takes a little bit of stepping forward and just taking some of the hits. I personally think that that's one of those things where county government can actually do what it's supposed to do, which is make life easier for those residents that don't. We don't have much jurisdiction over cities. But the fact is that this is a very large county, and it's very rural in nature. Once you get out of Yuma, you start to realize it really isn't that much. And And in this state, we do have the state of Maricopa and the rest of the state, and what happens is we are not willing to be left that far behind. We need to, if we're gonna complain, we better do something about it. And this is, I think, the way that we're going about it.
We also realized that there would never be another opportunity to have this much money, to be able to invest this much money into one single thing. But if you go out to AWC during the pandemic and you see everybody out there in their cars, because the only place to be able to access Wi-Fi was in your car at Arizona Western College, and they left bathroom doors open and building doors open so that these kids could access the restrooms and the drinking fountains. So during the pandemic, that's when you really realized that that our kids needed Wi-Fi, and our agriculture needed Wi-Fi, because everything is going computerized. Every field is computerized, and we needed it. So.
Well, I just want to throw something in real quick too, as far as East County. Yuma's growing, and it's going to jump the mountain and head east. And if we're not ready for it, we're trying to play catch up because we don't have the broadband. We don't have the things that are required for things to grow out there, whether it's residential or businesses. I'd rather be ahead of the game than behind it, because then you're always playing catch up. So the quicker we get this in, the sooner we can get it in, we can sustain the growth and what's coming our way, hopefully.
I'm gonna move on.
I'm gonna move on, because we could talk a lot about this, but I think that we are already on the right path. And just wanted to let you know we are doing our part of it. And when I say you guys, I mean you two new ones. Brian Fernandez is on the phone, and I'm sure he's familiar with these issues. And Tim has been working on this for a while. So this is focused on letting everybody know at the same time, but it's most critical that you ask questions if you don't understand, or that you know that we're available to answer them at any time. It doesn't have to be today. If you hit somewhere, I think I'm gonna get to the end of that, and that's where you can say whatever you want to say, and I'll get to say that we are available to you anytime you need us to make whatever points you need to make that advances any of these priorities. I'm going to move Yuma County water rights, and I was going to look to my left to the representative we have in the water board, and the guys that back there getting coffee or water or something. He picked the right time, Lucille, to get over there. Water has obviously been a big issue for years now, but it's getting to be a critical issue now. And a lot of the stuff that's happening in the state has sort of pitted us against each other, pitted the urban areas, the larger urban areas, Tucson, and Maricopa, or in this case, Phoenix and the urban areas, against the rural needs of people who live next to the Colorado or close to the Colorado. And there's a lot of talk about water rights and about what we're gonna do with these conditions that we're experiencing, that you continually hear it hasn't happened in 120 years, it's the lowest it's been in 1,200 years, and it's right. It's a situation that's ripe for a lot of discussion. But we are fortunate here in Yuma County that we have people who both work in agriculture and are members of the teams that are going to be WIFA, who are going to be dealing with water rights. It's not an easy issue. It's not a discussion that you can have without getting a little excited about it, especially if your life depends on the water. But I think a lot of the arguments that are made have to do with the fact that at some particular point in time, we had enough to divide between us, and it wasn't a big deal who got what. If we're getting to a point now that I think some of these states are just realizing, well, we've got to save some for the future. It's becoming a very complex deal that is now at a national scale. It is not just locally. We feel it locally because I think that at the end of the day, we're more like the consumer side of things, but it is a national issue at this level, at this area. With the Colorado River, it doesn't just impact Yuma County, it goes all the way out to, I think it's Colorado, Utah, way out there. And so to talk about this as briefly as you can, I want to give the microphone over to Supervisor Lines, who is more embedded into that situation than any of us are.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. It was interesting over the last couple of days, they had the Colorado River Water Users Association meeting in Las Vegas, and I received a text from several people that were participating in that meeting. That meeting consisted of 7 basin states, plus the tribes, plus the federal government, plus the water districts, plus Mexico, plus the cities and everybody else. The story on the Colorado River, this is the short story. There is no deal among the states. The situation is not improving from a hydrological standpoint. The administration in DC is not acting coordinated. States are not bowing to each other or the Fed. Lower Basin, which is Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, and California, have the biggest target on themselves. We are in a Tier 1 shortage on the Colorado River now. We will be in Tier 2 in 2023. And the prevailing thought is that we will be in Tier 3 by 2024. And the last sentence in that paragraph is seriously not good. I'm happy to report that we will probably go into the Christmas holidays still having WIFA meetings. We've had them for the executive board looking for a director almost every day over the past couple of weeks. And I am serving as the vice chairman of that board. So we prioritized finding a director before the end of the month, and we held interviews last week in Phoenix that were live. This week and today we will have a meeting of the subcommittee on long-term water augmentation, and we have a couple of proposals that we will have presented. We hope that this will be the beginning of many fingers put into a dam, although there's no water. Being able to hold back the challenges, but we have significant challenges that lie before us, and it is not getting any better for the foreseeable future. So anything and everything that we can do to conserve and preserve water is critical. Yuma's water rights are there, being Tier 1, 2, and 3, and there is a certain amount of thought around that in that we are protected, but when there's no water, there's no water. Participated in the state meeting of agriculture and agribusiness with Tim, and when you reach a point of dead pool behind the dams, it's catastrophic, and that means a significant change in the entire region or the entire basin states. So that's my brief report, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully I'll have some good news here by the end of the month.
Well, unless you can make it rain, it's just going to be more like moving things around. And really the problem here is that we're not naturally getting a solution to this problem. And again, I mentioned this and I'll repeat it. We're certainly lucky to have someone of the caliber of Supervisor Lyons involved in the process, because we do get all this information firsthand. And when we talk about water rights, and we talk about first, second, and third water rights, and older rights, and newer rights, and all that stuff, there's no rights on an empty. If you don't have any water, your rights are just worthless as far as I'm concerned. And it gets to a point where we're not really at the beginning of this. Technically, we're pretty much at the end before it goes into Mexico. And Mexico is supposed to get some water. So we're really at
That's by treaty, Mr.
Yeah, that's right. It's by treaty, and it's, most people are not aware there's 15 or 16 water wells along the border that can be used to pump out of the aquifer, which again, it's another issue that we want to get into. This is not intended to be a full-blown presentation on any of these particular items. This is just sort of intended to give you a sort of a brief summary of what we see to be the main issues that you're all going to be dealing with at some particular point in time. So I'm going to keep it moving, otherwise we'll be here all morning with this. And for the next item, I'm going to have Supervisor Pancrase go into the Yuma County particular matter non-attainment area, because it's something that she's been working on for a while. Supervisor Pancrase.
Well, PM10 in Yuma County has been an issue for over 30 years. And I can tell you that the Yuma County Farm Bureau has been working on it nonstop for those 30 years. The people at ADQ keep changing, and the people on the federal level keep changing, but our Farm Bureau folks are the same that have been working on it all these years. And I think we may have a solution thanks to the U of A. They have come up with a program to put on our monitors, and it looks like they may be putting them on all the monitors in the state of Arizona, and I'm hoping that Alejandro can speak to it a little better than I. It will cost us a little money, but it will save us a great deal of money in the long run, because what's his name, Michael at ADQ was so excited when the U of A gentleman that's been working on this spoke to him, because it monitors it monitors the wind, and it monitors the excess. We only, let me go back. We do not produce we don't produce the particulates. The particulates come from Mexico, they come from California. We get the wind, and the wind produces the PM10, which is the amount of particulates in the air. Okay, so if you check with our farmers, you will find that we have more water trucks in Yuma County than in the rest of the state. You'll also find that our farmers burn, if they burn a field, they burn it at night so that it'll all go down by the time by the next day, so that we don't cause any kind of PM10 during the day. And usually the wind dies down at night. So those kind of things have all been, the farmers have worked on and worked on and worked on. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alejandro, because he's been working on it diligently, but I think we have a solution that we may get out of our PM10 and moderate
Mr. Chairman.
classification.
Before you begin, I just want to make sure that in layman terms, everybody understands what we're dealing with. This is a federal EPA requirement. It is not a state requirement. So we need to make sure that everybody understands that when Supervisor Panther says we don't create PM10, we do. We just don't create it at the level that a non-attainment area reaches. We do create dust. We do create smoke every once in a while, but the freeway that goes through here and our proximity to Mexico get us to a non-attainment area in California. Well, look, it's not about trying to get away with doing something that we do or that we can manage. It's about how can we control wind? How can we control the situation, the diesel that goes through the interstate without affecting industry? How do we control burning landfills in Mexico? How do we control the wind, the sandstorms coming in from the dunes? It is that argument that we make all the time to the federal government when we tell them, look, you guys designate us as a non-attainment area because you test us 3 or 4 times a month or a year. And if we're unlucky, you'll test us when we have a dust storm or when we have, like a lot of traffic on the freeway and the wind is not moving or it moves in that direction. So it's not a simple issue that I think we can just simply say to our legislators, change it. The EPA thing is a federal issue. We need to address it with our federal representatives. We need to address it with the senators, with not the state, so much the state representatives. We just wanted to give you a sense of some of the issues that we're dealing with, so that if it ever gets to your level of discussion, you would understand what a non-attainment area designation means to us. It means that we have to deal with something that we can't manage, can't control. So I think that, Alejandro, you may be able to summarize it a little better than that, but in layman's terms, it is a situation that is that we're being sort of punished for something we can't control in a way. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, so the state, through ADQ, has been working with Yuma County and the Farm Bureau here locally, and now with U of A to design the state implementation. We monitor that measures wind speed is in the Yuma International Airport. Why we need to do that is because we want to claim that dust storms and the wind speeds here in Yuma County, that's what's preventing us from meeting the EPA requirements. Our approach to it is, it doesn't matter how much we try or how much the county is being asked to do, we're never going to meet their numbers unless wind is being considered as a factor. So natural sources of PM10. we're in the middle of the desert, so it's going to be really hard to meet their numbers unless, something extraordinary happens. So we want the EPA to acknowledge the fact that wind is an issue, and that we're also trying, as a county, we're trying to make this as whatever they require from the county. Like they've been talking about asking the county to pave 3 miles of road every year. So now that would really not make a difference in our opinion, but so that's where we're at right now, trying to negotiate with them, find middle ground, and see what we can do as a county that is not hitting our budget too hard, but we can also to some extent show the federal government that we're willing and hoping to help in this area as well.
Right. Again, it's an issue that may come to you through the state, but it's more the state have to come up with a plan, and we are able to participate. And if it doesn't, the kind of things that they would ask for, such as paving roads and stuff, it's the kind of thing we deal with every day. It's a budget issue for us. It's not a willing. We wish we could pave all the unpaved roads in Yuma County. It's just a matter of where you get which is what we're moving into, the budget, the state budget impact in Yuma County. The PM10, I think it's being handled pretty decently, but I think it's understood by now. Everybody understands that our geographical location makes it a very difficult issue because we don't have control over some of the most glaring causes of the PM10 non-attainment issue. So at this particular time, I think I need to move this on. And PM10 is something that we can discuss a lot between us and between the Arizona Department and legislators should know about it, but talking about it a lot it's not going to change it. I need to move this on.
Okay, we don't exceed except when the wind blows, is what we're trying to explain to them. And with the help of U of A and their new program, we're hoping to be able to do that. And then we will be able to get out of our non-attainment situation. That is the goal.
Unless they ask us to put some windmills on there, we're going to try to say that we don't control the wind. Okay, thank you, Alex. The next item is the county budget, and this is really where the road hits the rubber hits the road for us. We have a very, very statute-driven process. The budget is our main task as a supervisor. Coming up with a balanced budget is always a tough thing because we're always trying to keep taxes low. We're always trying to keep the costs lower. But government grows, whether we like it or not. When a county becomes 250,000 people, things happen that you need to deal with. You cannot refuse to deal with some of these issues that are budget related. Some of them were mentioned by Craig. Some of them, some of the stuff that I read here. I hope you all have this layout that says county budget priorities. There was a lot of talk in the process of letting you know what we're looking at in terms of the budget. I do not want to go through each and every one of them. I think you've heard some of them already, and I think you can look at some of those issues on your own. The issues like the pension fund, issues like the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections fee. Those are issues you're going to become much more familiar with because there will be presentations in the future about it. What it leaves me to say is that when you look at those things that you pass as legislation, look at the concept of unfunded mandates, which is something that we always keep complaining about. We get to pay for a lot of the stuff that the court system does, but we have no control over what they do. They have the authority to issue executive orders when they don't get their way. So, some of us haven't had the opportunity. Some of the supervisors never had the opportunity to get a judicial order from the judge telling you, I want this. And, I think the sheriff and I go back a long way, so we know what that means. What it means is you can say something to the presiding judge, but he can take it or not if he wants to, in terms of the budget. But there are some mandated services we have to take care of. And I can tell you this from the time that I've been in here, this has been the most conservative, the most conservative board in terms of taxing that I've had to deal with. And I guess the expression deal with means that, or to some people would mean that there's some controversy. I don't think anyone on this board really wants to make a decision that is going to impact negatively any of our residents. We're all elected officials. We all like to say we got taxes. We all like to say we have a balanced budget. But the sheriff will tell you, you'll never have enough money to have enough officers out in the street. On a county this size, he's fighting, the wind. And us will tell you that we balance our budget every year. We make sure there's a 15 to 20% reserve fund. I think we're rated we got one of the highest ratings when we sell our bonds. Those are all to me signs of a well-managed machinery, a well-managed county. But at the same time, we keep getting new mandates from the legislature asking us to do things that essentially cost money, but no money comes with the mandates. So please, that's all I can say really that matters. When you're looking at a legislative item that costs money for the counties, please attach the money so we can able to do it without passing it on to our residents, to our voters, because you all are our voters, you're our residents. When the census situation came up, and we were dealing with the fact that we had three representatives from Legislative District 25, I think, and 3 from Legislative District 23, and we sort of come up to a situation where we sort of balance that on. I actually said, no, that gives us more power. Actually having 6 members instead of 3 that we used to have some years ago, give us more representation, and it gives us a bigger voice in everything that happens. So I don't look at it that way. What I emphasize always is that this is a cooperative system. We need to cooperate with each other. We need to be in touch with each other. There's absolutely no reason why you can't contact someone from the county administration and ask them a question about something you guys are dealing with. So this is not where we tell you what you can do for us. This is a portion where we tell you what can we do for you that you can do for us. But that's a process, a communication process that I hope established early, and I hope it works out well for you and for us, because essentially we are statutory driven, and if it isn't in the statute, we can't do it. In the budget, it's the biggest task we have in front of us. So please help us put it together well. If you have opinions, opinions are like, ombligos, what's the word for that? Belly buttons. Everybody's got one, and so at the end of the day, when the decision has to be made, this board has been very, very good to work with. I take the opportunity to thank them for their cooperation. We have had balanced budgets for years. We haven't exceeded our budget. We have adjusted when we needed to. We've gone through crises. We have not laid off people that I remember for any economic budget crisis. We have done it all, not with those, creative accounting methods that sometimes are used by some governments. We've done it with real cuts and real measures that have had an impact on the people that we serve. And we hope we are able to tell the people we serve we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. And the circumstances are determined by you all. So I'm going to let you ask us any questions you have, and I'm moving this on to the place where you can tell us you have some priorities we can help you with. If you're, Tim can do that all the time. And so if you have some that we need to know that you have set as a priority for yourself and we can help you with, we're more than glad to take that under advisement.
First of all, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a cold, so forgive me, I'm still recovering. First of all, thank you for having me down here, and thank you for all your leadership and your innovation and your prowess of how strong you all work together in your community here. And I'm honored to be able to be here to work with you all, and I want you to all know that I will be a partner in Yuma is my home too. Just even though I live up in Buckeye, this is my home. I represent you all, and I'll make sure we get things done. And I will be a good listener. I want to be able to help. I got good leadership, good mentor from our Representative Gunn and others. But as far as priorities and all, obviously water's the big one. I'm not going to tell you all I'm an expert at it. I'm not. We have experts here. We have experts on our farmland. Our farmers, our folks up in the cities and council. They have those experts that get this, the education that. But yeah, so water's a priority. I'll say that. The broadband's a good issue that I'm familiar with. My background, so you all know a little bit about me. I've worked in government for almost 15 years, whether it's the financial side, for schools, municipalities, small business owners. So I have a lot of trade skills that I can bring to the table to help negotiate the good deals done for our community here down in Yuma. So I'll leave it at that.
Tell me what committees you're on. Tell me what committees you're on.
Oh, yeah, that's probably important enough. So, very honored to be, and humbled to be on agriculture, Vice Chair of Commerce, Ways and Means, and Appropriations. So I hear those are very good committees to be
Where's your
on.
cell phone number again?
Yeah, that's what I hear. So, I'm honored and humbled to be on those. I understand those are very important, and I know I'll do a good job. A lot of work ahead of me, and all of us here. So we'll make sure we make Arizona great, Yuma great, Buckeye great, our district great, and I'll work very hard for y'all.
So, Michael?
Yes, sir.
No, Michelle?
Thank you, Chairman, for having us here. As well, I am also humbled to be here. And all the information that you're giving us, budget priorities, not only does it affect us as citizens, we are still citizens, but it brings a lot. I know the Ronmet issue affected the students when they were trying to also do their homework, college students. And I'm also on the agriculture committee. I'm on the education and regulatory.
Okay, good. Those are good.
Tim?
Yes, sir.
No, I was gonna say Tim.
Okay, so.
Look, every time they call me sir, man, I just feel older. You can call me Tony, it's fine. I mean, I'm used to it. My wife calls me many different names that I can't just repeat, but.
We look forward to this next coming session. It's going to be a little different session. As we know, we're going to have a divided government. So every bill will be bipartisan in nature because we'll have a governor since Democrats signing a bill, which is not a bad thing, is having bipartisanship. I think as you look, some of the things we did last year, we did a lot of funding to try to offset some of the funding for prosecutions for the federal. When the federal doesn't pay you guys back, we're trying to backfill those things so we can prosecute the illegals that are running drugs and stuff to the counties. So we make sure that was there. We want to make sure that continues. Some of the money we put in for sheriffs are giving you the ability to hire some sign-on bonuses. We want to continue to make sure that stuff stays in the budget. Continue to make sure we work with the new governor on these bipartisan stuff. That's drugs. Fentanyl does not know partisanship, and so we need to make sure we continue those National Guard stuff and working with the sheriffs to make sure we stop the drug dealers. So I want to try to keep working on that as we move forward. Obviously, water. The three most important things is water, and
Water.
And water. And I've been doing that since we've been down there. So, but we're in a drought, and we have the Colorado River, the 7 basin states. People keep asking me why are we allowing cities to keep growing in Phoenix and stuff. We do have a 100-year assured water requirement that everybody's following under. Those, those cities in Phoenix are moving their allocation off of the lines on the river. We've been putting water in the ground for 25 years. So I mean, they're saving for today, but no one's realized that they needed to save more. We can all do more. We can't conserve our way out of this. Yuma has a big target on us for the water, and people, they want to monetize our water, and we tell them, I remind them every day that we monetize it. We send, 80 million people want our produce, and so we're going to side with the 80 million people instead of the other 8 million in Arizona. We're going to continue monetizing our water by shipping produce. And so, but there's a lot of things we can do in the waterfront as far as research and things that we can do to bringing more water in. I'm looking at putting another $250 million maybe out of the budget into additional funding. For those we have in the state budget. Even under this downturn, we have $2.5 billion in excess one-time money this budget cycle, by only less than I think 500 million in ongoing. So we're going to try to put some more money aside in rainy day funds, put more money in broadband, more money in water is my goal, and try to make sure we do some of these things that you've asked for as far as offsetting county costs. That's kind of the lay of the land for me. And I'm still on natural resources, energy, and water. The speaker asked me to chair government because it's one of the biggest committees. We've been handling a lot of these issues. I'm still going to be heavily involved with my teammates here on the land and agriculture rural affairs, but I'm also on appropriations.
Right, Tim, thank you very much. And I don't want to forget to mention the other two representatives, two senators, and a representative. Brian is, I think, on the phone. And Mariana Sandoval is out of, I think, Avondale, someplace out there. I hope she's listening, and if she's not, we're going to make sure she gets a sort of a minutes of this meeting. And Steiner Care, she's always been available. I do remember all this Friday meetings you schedule on Fridays afternoons to meet to discuss COVID issues and all these other issues. I've always said that the best kind of representative you can have is one that responds to your calls, that cares about what he represents. And I think that you all have that. You care about who you represent, and you have shown so far that running for office is something that isn't simple anymore. I can tell you that myself. It's been a really difficult time for the country, and anyone that steps up and puts their name up, to me, is a hero. So to me, you're all heroes, and you just need, from us, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of help to get you to do your job. I thank you to Brian, thank you to Mariana, thank you to Senator Kerr, because they care. I'm going to pass the microphone on to Supervisor Lyons, who's been trying to take it from me for the last 15 minutes.
Just a quick question, when you were talking about the fentanyl, Craig, maybe you can address this as well. Are we seeking to reclassify fentanyl as a poison other than a drug? There had been some discussion on that previously.
Good timing for me. Mr. Chair, Supervisor Lyons, not that I'm aware of in terms of the definition, but I think that actually will be part of the negotiation when we talk about the thing that I talked about, which level of person are we going after. That definition component is going to be very important.
Right. Well, this agenda calls for an open roundtable discussion. I think we've had that since the beginning. So, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what else we need to discuss with you, but whatever else you forget or we forget, we'll let you know as soon as we can. Is there anyone in the public or anyone in administration that would like to take the mic and say something? And I remind everybody that this doesn't happen just because it happens. It takes the administrator, it takes the assistant administrator, it takes Alejandro, it takes Kevin. It takes a team of people to put them together. I don't want to leave the meeting without telling you how important it is. I have always thought that government's about relationships, and having a good relationship with your representatives, with your senators, with your staff, with the people that represent you, like CSA or ACO, it's very critical to get the job done. So I tell you what, I appreciate it. I think the board here appreciates that, and it's always been a team situation. We may have our differences. I don't want to, leave that saying that. I wasn't even looking left, but we may have our differences, but the ability to get beyond that, I think, and do what's best for people, I think, is the most critical ability that a representative should have, or could have. So thank you all very much. Is there anyone else that wants to address the board and anything? Or if not, then I want to thank you all for attending, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. I want to thank Brian for standing on the phone and not saying much. And again, but that's the first. Yeah. And again, thank you everyone, and have a good rest of the day and a good weekend. And I hope the travel back isn't that tough, going back to Phoenix, Obacay. Hopefully it's a nice day. It's cold, but nice. Some people, I'm sure some people in the Midwest, when they're having hurricanes. I visited Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, last month or the month before last. And the first thing that I had was I was at the hotel and there was a tornado warning. And I'm going, what am I doing here? In Richmond, Virginia, there's a tornado warning. You get inside, look for a place that has no windows. I said, well, that looks like prison to me. So it was kind of tough. But I think that reminded me just how well, how we complain about it being cold, and it really isn't that cold. But, we are living in a blessed place, and it's our job to make it even better for people here. Thank you very much. All of you, thank you very much. And this, I think, ends the meeting.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.